In this video, we'll learn about delay effect devices and how they can help turn a stale mix into a much more interesting song. Delays are devices that delay or hold a copy of a signal for a user-defined amount of time. When the delayed signal is mixed back in with the unprocessed signal, it adds a sense of depth or dimension. There are several types of delay effects devices, which are defined by the amount of delay time and the presence or lack of modulation. For example, doubling, echo, slapback, and repeating delay effects typically don't use modulation, whereas flanging, phase shifting, and chorusing do. So I've got a track set up here called Simple Delay, and I've got a virtual instrument plug-in on it, and I've a couple of different delay devices that we're going to look at. So first of all, I'll play a note so that we can hear that we don't have any delay. Now I'm going to activate this first delay by clicking on the activator button, and let's take a look at the parameters. So first of all, I can set the delay time, and I can do that in terms of having the delay synced to the rhythm of the song. So right now, these 8 buttons here will determine the amount of delay time based upon 16th notes. So 1 would be 1/16th note, 2 would be 2/16ths or an 8th note, and so on. I can unclick this sync button and it will show time, and now I can set that in increments of a specific time. Right now it's at 100 milliseconds. So now if I press a key on my keyboard, I should hear that I've got the delay in. And we're hearing several repeats happen. That's because I've got this feedback switch turned up down here at the bottom of the delay. And what the feedback does is actually take the delayed signal and return it back to the input of the delay so that it can be delayed a second time. So you get a repeat of the repeat, and so on. So if I set this on 0, we should hear just one repeat. There you go. And as I increase this, you'll hear more and more repeats. Now with this particular delay, I can actually have a left and a right delay set up. Right now they're linked together. If I unclick the linking button, you'll notice that I get one delay time for the left and a different one for the right. And in this case, I've got it set for a 16th on the left and then a quarter note on the right. And last but not least, I have a dry-wet setting here. Now when you place a time-based effect like a delay on a track, you're going to want to determine the amount of unprocessed signal to processed signal, or dry to wet. If I set this all the way to the dry side, I won't get any effect at all. And if I set it all the way over to the wet side, in effect all I'm doing is just delaying that by the increment that I have here, and I'm not actually hearing the dry signal. So you're probably going to want to set this somewhere more in the middle to taste. Okay, so that's one of Live's basic delay devices. Another one is this ping pong delay device. And this is very, very similar, with the exception that I have this EQ circuit that's included. And what I can do here is I can set a center frequency and then a Q amount on how wide around that center frequency that I'm allowing signal to pass through. Outside of this orange line here, on the other sides, I'm actually rolling off or cutting back on the EQ. So again, I can move the center frequency around, determine where I want that, and then with this setting, I can actually open or close the Q, so I'm letting more or less signal pass through. Let's hear what that sounds like. You can kind of hear the degradation of the signal in terms of the frequency. And if I move this around, you'll hear that change in time. So that can create a very interesting and useful effect, and later on when we talk about automation, we'll talk about how you can actually automate a parameter on a plugin so it actually changes in real time. Now I'm going to go over to this filter delay track. I'll activate that one. And we'll see here that I have kind of a combination of the two devices we saw on the other track. I actually have 3 delays, and I have independent settings for each one. So I've got delay time, feedback. As well, I have the little EQ circuit, but I can do that independently for 3 different delays. And I can also pan those left, right, and center however I want, and then set a volume or gain level for each one of the 3, and then an overall output on that. And this can end up creating a very, very rich sound. So right now I've got one of these set at an eighth note, the right side is set at a quarter note, and the center is set 1/16 past the quarter note. So that creates a very, very interesting delay effect. Moving on, let's take a look at what we've got happening here on the chorus track. Chorus is an effect that uses a modest amount of delay. In this particular plugin, I've actually got two delay lines. One is currently set to 18.9 milliseconds, and you can change that with this slider. And a second one that I've currently got set to 13.4 milliseconds. But one of the additional things that we're going to do here is we're actually going to modulate that delay time. And we can do that in one of three ways. If it's set to off, the modulation is only going to affect the first delay line. If it's set to fix, only the first delay line is modulated. And if I set it on mod, I'll actually be modulating both of these. Now, I modulate that by an amount. In this case, I've got it set to 0.84 milliseconds. So it's going to fluctuate the delay time on these delays, an additional 8.84 milliseconds and a less 8.84 milliseconds. And then I can set how fast it's going to do that. Currently, we've got that set to happen 2.7 times per second. So let's hear what that sounds like. Now, if I take the activator button and turn that off, we'll hear that this is actually a pretty stale sounding preset. And that by putting the chorus on, it's actually kind of detuning the sound of it and making it sound much richer. And again, we can change these individually, or I can drag this parameter right here to change both of those simultaneously. And you can hear how we can go from a pretty subtle effect to a pretty aggressive effect. Here's subtle. So depending upon what you're trying to accomplish, that can be a very interesting effect. Now, the other thing that we can do is we can combine this with a delay. In this case, I've set up a delay on a send, so I'm going to copy a little bit of signal from the chorus track and send it over here to this return track where I've got a ping pong delay set up. And if I activate that, we should hear both of these together. Now notice on the ping pong delay, since I have it on a return track, I've set the dry wet setting to 100%. That's because the relatively unprocessed signal is coming through the chorus track and only the delay is being added through this return track. And you can hear that that gives that a much deeper sense of dimension than without. So hopefully after this video, you're as excited about delay effects as I am. In any case, try adding some delay effects to your mixes and experiment with what they can do.